Okay, so let's jump right in. The market, after what feels like months of just nonstop gains, suddenly slammed on the brakes. We're going to break down exactly what happened, why the huge AI boom might be hitting a wall, and what it all means for the economy and, for you.
And this was the number that stopped everyone in their tracks. The Dow Jones dropped over 557 points in one day. That's a huge sign that the market's incredible climb was hitting some serious turbulence. So the question is, what was really behind it?
And that really gets us to the main question here, doesn't it? I mean, this entire year, the whole market rally has been riding this massive wave of excitement around AI. So, was this just a little dip? Or are we starting to see the first real cracks in that great AI trade? Is the party over?
All right, so to really get what went down, we have to start with the one sector that's been in the driver's seat for everything: technology. The story of this big sell-off, it really begins and ends with those high-flying stocks that have basically become the face of artificial intelligence.
And when you look at the numbers, wow, it was a sea of red everywhere. The Dow, the S&P 500, the tech-heavy Nasdaq, they were all down and down big. No part of the market was really safe. But you can see the real heart of the pain was in the tech sector, the very engine that's been powering us all year. So here's the kicker. The very same companies that were fueling this massive rise were the ones leading the charge back down. Investors started to get a little shaky, they're looking at these sky-high prices for stocks like Nvidia, and they're starting to wonder, hey, can this really last? And that anxiety is what put the brakes on everything.
But this nervousness, it didn't just come out of nowhere, right? It's actually rooted in some very real-world issues. The thing is, the AI boom has gotten so huge that it's starting to create its own problems, its own bottlenecks. Let's pull back the curtain and see what's actually happening.
Morgan Stanley actually has a name for this whole situation. They're calling it a pricing supercycle. And what that means is basically you've got this insane race where everybody, cloud companies, startups, you name it, is trying to build AI data centers. And that incredible demand is sending the cost of computer hardware through the absolute roof. And you can see how this creates a domino effect, right? All this demand for data centers leads to a shortage of the really critical parts, like DRAM and NAND memory chips. That in turn means the companies that actually build the servers and PCs are paying way, way more for parts, and that squeezes their profits. The boom is actually becoming super expensive. And here is the real-world fallout. Because of this exact pressure on profits, Morgan Stanley went and downgraded a whole bunch of these hardware companies. And just look at those drops. I mean, Dell and HPE got absolutely hammered. This wasn't some theoretical problem. It was causing direct, real pain to major companies. Okay, so this whole tech problem, it isn't happening in a vacuum. It's playing out against a much bigger backdrop of economic uncertainty. And to get the full picture, we really have to zoom out and look at the biggest player in the whole game, the Federal Reserve. Because right now, at the very top of the U.S. economy, the Fed is basically split right down the middle. There is a huge disagreement among the top officials about what to do next with interest rates, and that division is sending all sorts of mixed signals to the market. You can really break it down into two camps. On one side, you have officials like Governor Christopher Waller. He's looking at the job market slowing down, and he's saying, hey, we need to cut rates in December to keep the economy going. But then, on the other side, you have officials like Susan Collins from the Boston Fed, and they're worried that cutting rates too soon could just light a fire under inflation all over again. And this quote from Governor Waller really brings it home, It puts a human face on this whole policy fight. He's saying he's worried that these high interest rates are starting to really hurt everyday people, and he thinks it's time for the Fed to ease up a bit before things get worse. So where does all this leave the market? Well, pretty much on the edge of its seat. As you can see, traders are pricing the odds of a rate cut in December at what is basically a coin toss. It's almost 50-50. And that split tells you everything you need to know about how much the Fed's debate is clouding the entire economic picture. And this feeling of uncertainty, it's not just in the world of AI chips or with the Fed. It's actually happening all over the place. When you look across different industries, you see a really similar pattern. Old school industries are changing, and even the new disruptors are running into their own problems. Let's just take a look at two quick examples that show you exactly what I mean. We'll look at one from the world of old media, and then another from the new wave of real estate technology. So first, in the old school media world, you've got the broadcast giant Sinclair buying up a big chunk of its rival, Scripps. And the goal here is pretty obvious. They want to force a merger. They think by combining, they could find $300 million in savings. It's a classic move you see when an industry is feeling the heat. But it is not just the legacy guys feeling the squeeze. Even the big tech disruptors, the companies that totally changed the game, are finding themselves in some pretty rough waters. A perfect example is Zillow. I mean, Zillow is getting hit from all sides right now. They've got a lawsuit from a competitor about how they handle their listings, and they're being sued by the FTC and a bunch of states over a partnership they have with Redfin. It really goes to show you that even when you're on top, growth comes with a whole new set of problems. Okay, so we've talked about the AI jitters, the Fed's big debate, entire industries in transition. But what does all this volatility and uncertainty actually mean for you, for your finances? Let's bring it all home and talk about what you can actually do about it. Look, all that big picture stuff can feel completely out of your hands, but the secret is to focus on what you can control, and that's your own financial foundation. With all this noise out there, probably the smartest thing you can do is just get your own financial house in order. So financial planner Chloe Moore lays out 3 really smart, simple moves. First off, just know your numbers. Figure out what you're actually taking home after taxes. Second, build a budget that's actually about your long-term goals, not just about paying the bills this month. And third, if you have any extra cash, use it to supercharge your retirement savings. These are the kinds of moves that work no matter what the economy is doing. All right, so let's wrap this up. We've seen the AI trade get a little shaky, we've seen the Fed trying to figure out what to do next, and we're seeing entire industries in flux. The market has hit the brakes, and the road ahead, well, it's pretty uncertain. So the only real question left is the one right here. What's your next move?